this will work this time. So, so I guess for the purpose of people who'd be watching this, we tried to do this. We tried to do this maybe a week and a half ago, and that was awesome. It was such a good outcome. I came away from that with such a buzz, and then and then the recording failed. So here we are, round number 2, and we'll have to try and pretend that we don't know anything about each other.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but that never works. That never works. So I guess sort of some background information for people who are watching. So from my side, Sailing with a Weirdo is all about broadly speaking, using the medium of sailing to tell a story, right? So I lost my mother to suicide in 2019. I'm also ex-military, and so there is an overlap between the work that Skeleton Crew does and then what I try and achieve through my channel, through my endeavors. And then obviously you reached out to me via Facebook and said, look, can we do a collaboration at some point? And you guys have got something coming up fairly urgently. That's kicking off, I think, on my birthday, I think was the conclusion, and we can get onto that in a second. So maybe we can start there, so skeletoncrew.org. Maybe we can sort of start with you guys. Tell us a little bit about what Skeleton Crew does, how that came about, and then we can talk about your background.
Perfect. So Skeleton Crew, it's basically all we do here locally. We do adventure therapy for veterans and first responders through sailing. So it's basically the same exact thing you're doing, just on the other side of the pond. There's not much adventure therapy integrated into the military yet, and there's been a ton of suicides. And I'm sure, as you know, it affects probably 90% of the people you meet, whether they know somebody's lost somebody, they personally lost somebody, but it seems like it's affected, almost everybody. It's out of control. So what we do is we'll take them out and teach them the basics of sailing and try to help rebuild their network, their support system, all this stuff, because I'm sure we talked about it last time, when you go through combat or a seriously traumatic event, the hippocampus in your brain shrinks. So there's physical changes in your brain. So you stay in that fight or flight. Well, if you can replace the bad memories with good memories while you're on an adrenaline rush, it helps regrow it. That way your brain, I'm not going to say it's going to go back to the way it was, but it can grow back to a manageable spot. And then plus a bunch of other things, you can help deal with all the trauma, and you don't stay in that fight or flight mode. Okay.
Well, yeah, let's that's a really important point. Let's park that point for a second, because I think, certainly for me, once I started understanding when it comes to dealing with grief, dealing with trauma, dealing with bad events, things that were where you were a victim of abuse, or just a long-term, whatever is affected, it has changed, makes changes in your brain. When I started understanding a little bit more about physically how that works, like what exactly happens, that for me was a game changer, because that helped me really to sort of understand not just myself, but other people as well. So yeah, let's talk about veterans, right? Because you're ex-Marine Corps. The guy who started Skeleton Crew is ex-Army Rangers, was it?
No, he was Navy rescue swimmer.
Oh, right. No, ex-Navy, right. We won't hold that against him, right?
Kind of.
I have a lot of banter with James from Sailing Zingaro. From time to time, we have a bit of banter. I especially teased him when the Army beat the Navy a couple of months ago. That was good fun. So the majority of Skeleton Crew staff are ex-military, and famously, I think about, when was it, 2015, that sort of craze swept the planet almost. People were doing press ups to raise awareness for 22 veterans that, on average, 22 veterans that take their own life every single day. And that's just in the US. Obviously,
Yeah.
here in the UK, we have a staggering number as well. It's not quite to the magnitude of that, but when you start looking at it comparatively, the size of your military versus the size of our military, the numbers are very similar. And across the globe, it's pretty staggering. I actually published some information on my Facebook page, the Sailing with the Weirdo Facebook page, about, especially in modern times, the likelihood and the rates at which servicemen are committing suicide per year. It's the highest demographic globally of people being lost at their own hands, through arguably preventable things. So how does Skeleton Crew go about, getting the message out there? Because you've got a complement of 22 people that are part of the group, which, I guess poetically 22 is the same kind of number we were just talking about. But, so the people that you can physically accommodate and you can physically work with, how do you go about finding them, and what do you do with those guys?
That's basically what I do. So it's all networking. I'll get out and I go to different events. I talk to people everywhere I go. If I find out they're a veteran, especially, or a first responder, I'm like, hey, look, this is what I do. Give me a call. I'll give them a card. I'll try to get them out that way. Like, if you know somebody, send them my way.
Right.
Last night, I just did a big presentation at the Houston Rotary Club. That's a conglomeration of more business people. They do have ties to military or other veterans organizations, first responders, and all that. So it's all word of mouth. With Taylor's documentary, that's helped out enormously. That gets us a pretty solid amount of views and inquiries, and this is ones around the country, not just locally.
Right.
So that's basically it. It's all. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Yeah. So
that'll have to work. The lights in this room are motion censored, so if I start doing
nice.
that,
Nice. Yeah. So basically, it's all word of mouth and from the documentary, or he'll go around the country, do screenings with different military groups, or like military vets at colleges. He just went to like Columbia University. He's turned around flying to Atlanta on Friday. Yeah, so just any way we can get out and meet people and talk face to face with them.
Right.
That's usually the best results.
Okay. Now, I think we spoke about this on the last call. There's something that you can physically affect. You can reach out, touch somebody, you can bring them into the work that you guys are doing, and through that, there's a physical experience that those guys benefit from. Now, somebody might be, on their sofa, and admittedly, the content that we put out there is via social media, and social media can be one of the most toxic things to get sucked into, create bad behaviors. So somebody might be watching this video, sat on their sofa, they've heard about you guys, they think you guys are out of reach, and maybe you are physically not accessible to that guy, right? So, he's reliving some of the dreams and the bad experiences that he saw on the front line, or just feels like the world is a bit much, doesn't have the skills and whatever you. But so talking to that kind of guy, what is the message that you guys try and get out to people like that who are aware of Skeleton Crew, but can't physically access, can't come sailing with you?
Usually, my biggest thing is do something small. Get outside, go for a walk.
Right.
Go to the grocery store, go to the corner store. But that's the biggest thing, is actually getting up and going outside.
Right.
Usually, especially on like a sunny day. You know, you get the extra vitamin D. It helps feel better. If you go walk around the block, 2 blocks, you know, whatever, that'll definitely, like for me personally, that's what helps because I'll even get stuck in my condo sometimes. It's dark, it's like a cave, and I'm just like, screw it, I'm not getting off the couch. I'm just gonna sit here and watch TV. Um, but if I can get out in the sun, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is what it feels like. And I'll start feeling better rather quickly. Or like me personally, if I'm starting to get back down there, I tell people same thing. Do what I do. Go out and talk to somebody. Just make a random conversation. Hey, how you doing? Just BS
Right.
in the grocery line or gas station or something.
Yeah.
Little things like that to get them out, get them interacting more. That's the best thing to do.
Yeah, and I must say that's a big part of, that resonates with me personally, but it's also a big part of what what I try and encourage people to do. So there's little behavioral things that I encourage people to do
Mm,
every day, and they might be something as simple as before you go to bed, just put a glass of water next to your bed. When you wake up in the morning, have some water, right? Immediately from a digestive point of view, it makes you feel better. Right. At some point, ideally when your alarm clock goes off the first time, but if not, then maybe the second time, put the radio on. I prefer FM radios. I have an Alexa, which I've unplugged because it does my head in. But it's, so I prefer old school FM radio. I stick the radio
mm,
on. So there's a combination of music, some chit chat between the DJs and all that kind of stuff. And I struggle to get into bad habits, and I struggle to stay in bad moods when the radio's going. There's something about it
mm,
that just lifts my spirit. So it's those kind of things. And then I wake up and then I shake my duvet out. So at least I feel like I've made my bed.
mm,
And I think we spoke about this on the first call, that speech by the Rear Admiral, I can't remember what his name was, about
mm.
make your bed. Right. So
Yep.
my father taught me that as well. He's like, look, make your bed. Not and his reason wasn't because it gives you that first success of the day and it gives you something nice to come home to. His reasoning was actually anything else that you want to do for the rest of the day. Like if you want to fold up some clothes, if you get to the point where you've done some laundry and you're folding up some clothes, you've got somewhere that you can work. You've got a work surface that you can fold your shirts on,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that made a big difference. Um, so that, yeah, I think we're both in the office, right? Um,
Right.
and so that really makes a big difference. So I teach that to my kids as well, but I also tell that to other people. There's a conference recently with Jordan Peterson. He's a bit of a controversial psychologist, but he says
Mm,
a lot of good stuff, right? But he was essentially asked by somebody, like, what advice can you give to somebody other than comments like, make your bed in the morning? And I think the point that he missed out was like you have to start with taking personal responsibility for your own behavior. You
mm-hmm.
can't expect somebody else to fix your problems for you. The world is pretty harsh, right? There are people who will come and check on you, but actually, by and large, the world is a pretty harsh place. You have to take responsibility for your own behavior and start with the little things. Start with making sure that your own house is in order, that your behaviors and your habits
Mm-hmm.
and what you're expecting of yourself is kind of where it needs to be before you can start saying to other people like, you guys aren't you guys aren't making, stepping up to the mark enough, whether that be the governments, whether it be charities, whether it be friends, whether it be, whatever else. So yeah, those little successes, I really, really believe in those. Really believe in those. And not every day is possible, right? Some days, I went through, especially November, December, I went through days where I had a long list of things that I wanted to get done. And by the end of the day, I'd done nothing. I'd managed to feed myself, and that was about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about, so how did you get involved with Skeleton Crew from a personal point of view? How did you get involved in these guys?
So one of the guys that met up with Taylor and co-founded it, I was actually stationed with him. So he was
Okay.
another Marine I knew from back in the day, and he got me to fly down here I was living about 2,500 miles away up in Washington State. So I flew down for the weekend to Texas. Figured, all right, I'll check out the sailing thing. It's I had that stereotype in my head that it's for old, rich, retired people. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not Thurston Hell the third, sipping champagne and all that stuff. So it was a trip. We just went out on Galveston Bay. It was a weekend sail. We stayed the night on the boat, and on that second day coming back, it just hit me. I had no anxiety, no anger. I was just relaxed. I was happy. Like I actually felt like I could feel everything in my body just gone, and I was just relaxed for the first time. And it hit me. I'm like, this is where I need to be.
Right.
So I talked to him, said, hey, look, I see myself here. I love sailing. I'm really digging this. I'm going to sell everything and move down here.
Okay.
Met with a bit of skepticism at first because it's quite a long move. But yeah, sold the house, got rid of the apartment, walked away from a 6-figure career, and drove 2,500 miles down here with all my stuff. And I'm like, hey, I'm here. Let's do this. And just been plugging away ever since, trying to help as many people as I can.
Okay.
I mean, the way I figure is I've messed up so much in life, and like in any aspect you think you can mess up, I have.
Right.
Between drinking, that was a huge cause of anything, or relationship wise, money wise, jobs. I mean, you name it, I've done it. So
Right.
I'm taking that, and then like using my experience, I can be like, hey, look, I can talk to these younger guys back. Look, dude, I've already done this. I've already messed this up. I'll show you what's going to happen. Don't do this. Why don't you let me show you something else? Or, come out here. We'll start something else and get them on a road to go into a better spot, hopefully. But again, it's like you're saying, it's just that little step, that first win.
Yeah. No, I feel, it's funny when I remember you telling me that story the last time, and I felt like I was talking to a brother from another mother. Because, right. For me, it was, I used to be a cyclist. I used to be one of those like crazy lycra clad guys. And, I looked at a mountain, and the first thing I think is, oh yeah, I want to go ride my bike up that mountain. And then ride it down just as fast. I'm a big guy. I weigh 220 pounds. I'm not exactly a classic cyclist, but it didn't stop me. I was still a competitive racer. And then through injury, rugby injuries, surfing injuries, just being stupid, like us boys do, right? That's what guys. That's why men live shorter than women do, is because we take ourselves out of the gene pool a little quicker. But and then so it was 2007. I came up with I developed a knee injury, which actually turned out not to be a knee injury. It was sciatica. I had a slip disc, but I didn't know about it, and so I spent 6 months trying to get some physiotherapy on a knee injury, which never was. And but I'd given up racing by that point. And the way I found out that it was sciatica was I eventually did injure my back really badly in 2012, doing some landscaping, or 2011, and it took about a year eventually for surgery, etc. But my racing career had gone out the window by that point, and so I was kind of, life was okay. My kids were young. There was stuff going on. I was working on the house, and married, etc. So there was a lot of distractions from the stuff that I enjoyed, and not that I didn't enjoy my kids, but us blokes, we like to be out and getting our hands dirty and getting busy, getting sweaty, So it was and then I ended up getting divorced. And when I got divorced, my kids weren't living in my house anymore. I realized, hell's bells, my life is a shadow of what it once was. And I started getting really depressed. And that was the first time I hatched a really, really elaborate plan to kill myself. My plan was to drive down to a beach, get drunk in the cold with a scalpel blade tied to a helium balloon, and I was going to give myself a jugular injury, and this helium balloon was going to take the weapon away. And no one would know how this guy ended up bleeding to death on a beach, right?
Wow.
So that was, I had thought it through, and I hatched it that way so that I knew that I would be my passing would be as inconvenient to the general public as possible. I didn't want my kids to live with the knowledge that I'd done this to myself, because especially when it comes to sons, there is very much a monkey see, monkey do. If my son had learned that I'd done that to myself, guaranteed that in his middle adult years, he probably would have done that to himself as well. It's almost as sure as day follows night. That's very often the case. So I didn't want them to know, and I also wanted it to be suspicious so that they could get my life insurance payout. So the thing that stopped me was something that I mentioned on my last call. So I spoke to my brother once, and he's very involved in the church and has done a lot of work around amongst suicide victims, well, their families, but also people who've not been successful. And one of the things he learned was that a lot of people who've been unsuccessful, when they have almost past the point of no return, when they've actually physically jumped, or they've done something that should be past the point of no return, they've had this incredibly burning desire to go back and to really, there's a desire to be alive. And yeah, and I didn't want that. I didn't want that. I didn't want to get to that point and go, put the blood back in, kind of thing, or get halfway to the beach, which the beach that I chosen was 4 hours away. Get to the beach, decide, no, I'm not going to do this, and then have to drive all the way home again. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to do the walk of shame. Right? And so. Yeah, so I had therapy with a government provided therapist, and this young person sat there with a clipboard and was getting upset with me because I wasn't doing the homework that she set me. And I thought to myself, I could probably do a better job than she can. And then it struck me, I can. The best person to fix me is me. And so I started turning my life around, started getting back in touch with who I was, the kind of person I was, being out there for my friends. I realized that a lot of my friends had left the country, they'd moved to other places. I myself am an immigrant. And so, yeah, I had most of my friends were also immigrants. And by the time I got divorced, they were living in other countries again. They'd either moved back to South Africa, or they moved to Namibia or Australia or various places like that. So so I had to sort of essentially start again. And then I went on a quest to find, what am I going to do to replace cycling? Because I couldn't go back to those days. I needed something that that would light my soul. And I tried golf, I tried squash, I tried windsurfing, I tried all sorts of stuff, and there was just nothing. There was something missing. And then, and then my mum passed away. Gosh, and that was an awful experience. But I, by that point, moved to the town I live in now, called Portishead, and we've got a great little marina there. I spotted a little sailboat that was for sale, and I thought, that makes sense, because I've had fishing boats, and I've done windsurfing, and I've done surfing. I've been around the sea my entire life. I should just add these together and see what that's like. And yeah, gosh, and then it hit me, right? I got lessons, I got absolutely hooked. And so I've essentially been sailing for the last, well, it's been now 3 years. So I think I started in 2020. Yeah, so it's just over 3 years I've been sailing. So sold a little 22-footer, got a 26-footer, sold that, got a 31-footer, and then decided to upgrade to a 42-footer so I could have more people involved. Ooh. Finally decided, the lights have finally decided I'm alive. Yeah, one of the things I'm always conscious of, and I'm keen to get your view on this, after quite a long-winded story from my side, I'm quite keen to get your view on this. So for you, it was sailing, right? That's your go-to happy place, and that's the vehicle that you and Skeleton Crew choose to reach out to people, to tell the story, and to change lives, right? And for me, that's the same. It's sailing, right? But I'm curious to know, so for some people, it's not sailing, right? They look at these videos and they go, yeah, but I'm not a sailor, right? I get seasick, or I live in I don't know, Kansas or somewhere else that doesn't have a coast. And so what can people who are not interested in sailing, what should they be thinking about rather than the path that you and I went down?
Find what makes them happy. Um, See what you like in nature. Maybe it's just going to the woods, walking up and down a mountain. Maybe it's something like you cycling or mountain biking. Maybe it's indoor rock climbing, like outdoor rock climbing. I'd say any physical activity that you enjoy that's going to exert energy and help you kind of, if you wear yourself out, then you're going to be more prone to relax, and it kind of slows your brain down sometimes as well.
Right.
So I'd say mainly find something you like doing. Hell, go sit on a lake and go fishing. I mean, that's amazing, you know. But yeah, I think nature. I think something outside nature really does wonders for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, the from a study point of view, the data backs that up as well.
Mhm.
One of the nice things about being out in nature is that you're surrounded by something that's bigger than you. So you have a sense of perspective about, there are things that you are part of an ecosystem that's way bigger than you. You belong to something because we are part of nature. We're not in addition to nature. Human beings are part of nature, right? But also one of the groups of people who have the lowest prevalence of stress and depression are gardeners. Um,
Really?
yeah, because even though they're spending time on their own very often, the point is that they are dealing with nature. They're dealing with other living beings. They're dealing with plants. They're dealing with things that need to be prepared now in order to plant tomorrow or next week, in order to nurture, in order to harvest, in order to then, start preparing for next season. So there's always some kind of process that they're going through and planning that they have to do. So I would agree with you. Get out in nature, find something that you
Hmm.
enjoy doing, but very much like, take fishing, for example. No two fishing spots are the same. There'll be challenges with roots, stumps, rocks. There'll be different meteorological conditions. There's currents and streams, or whatever's gone on that changes the behavior of the fish in that spot or on that given day and things like that. And so that problem solving, I think,
Hmm.
is really important. Being able to kind of decide, what am I going to do today to try and get the outcome that I want? And obviously the outcome is catching a fish. So I would totally agree with that. But interestingly, for the data also shows that people who are regularly engaged in stuff that gets them connected with other people, being able to be sociable is
Hmm.
arguably the biggest thing. And so what we see here in the UK is people who are regular churchgoers or engaged in some organized religion where they are regularly fellowshipping and hanging out with people who they agree with, those kind of things. Very low incidences of stress and depression. Likewise with sports, football players, soccer players in your world, anything like you said that makes you exert yourself, that builds up a bit of a sweat, that makes you focus. Forget about these things that are stressing you out. Focus on this thing. Watch the ball. Aim for an objective. Compete. See how you improve your fitness. See how you're getting along. Those things incredibly, incredibly powerful. Just to be able to cope with being able to drag yourself away from the bump and grind and the bullshit that's
Yeah,
stressing us out. Right.
exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk quickly. Let's talk quickly about that hippocampus. So you
Mm.
mentioned early on that these traumatic experiences, they change the neural networks in our brain. So tell us a bit about that.
So I'm not as like knowledgeable about it as others and you, but once you live in that traumatic experience, whether it's combat or it's a day in, day out grind of seeing the worst in people or bad things happen to people, your brain, the frontal lobe where the hippocampus actually shrinks and it keeps you in that fight or flight mode. That's your brain saying, okay, we have to deal with this all the time now. We're just going to stay here. That's our self-preservation mode. That's how you live now. That's how you're going to be. That's how your body's going to change and adapt. So now when you get somebody out of that situation and you can put them in a healthy situation, so like sailing, it's the slowest adrenaline rush you'll ever get, right? So you get the boat leaned over, you get everybody like, holy shit, we're doing this. Um, you start replacing the bad memories with good memories while on the adrenaline rush. So that actually helps regrow the hippocampus. It's
Right.
slow.
Okay.
It's very, very slow, but it does help start that process to where now you're not staying in the fight or flight. Now you're more enjoying it and you can look at things and be like, all right, well, it's not that bad. Or, my thoughts are always, if you replace the bad memories with good memories while on, in an adrenaline rush like that, maybe if you have a panic attack or something like that out in town and you start going back into that mindset, maybe now you, instead of like thinking about the bad things where it's combat or trauma or whatever, you're going to
Mhm.
think about, okay, I was sailing or I was skydiving or I was doing something crazy, and that's
Yeah.
going to click in. And so you're going to think about that and the good things instead of the bad things. So hopefully that will eventually take over. So instead of ever having to freak out and run home and hide under your couch or your futon like I used to do, um, you'll get that adrenaline rush, like, oh man, this reminds me of skydiving. That was a great time. This reminds me of sailing or camping or mountain biking or cycling. And it
Mhm.
keeps those good, happy memories in the forefront of your brain. So you can go back to those, you can rely on those, and then just kind of keep you in an overall better mood.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. I never knew that. But it does make sense because I guess we remember
Mm-hmm.
we remember good things that are tremendously good, or we remember things that are tremendously bad. So something that was exhilarating for the wrong reasons, those things solidify and they create,
Mm-hmm.
kind of anchors in our mind. And then we have behaviors that spill off the back of those things, so hence the fight and flight response. If you start having too many traumatic experiences, and then you be reminded of those things. But likewise, I guess, if something is tremendously good. So one of the most exhilarating days, if not the most exhilarating day of my entire life, was, like you just mentioned, my first day on a sailboat, 35-footer off Cape Town at this. I was invited at the start of the Cape to Rio yacht race, and it was absolutely insane. I will bore anybody to death about that day. All right, I don't think we've got enough time on this call to talk about that day, but that was insane. That was the most exhilarating day of it. I've fallen asleep at the open door of a chopper, doing 180 miles an hour. Yeah, it was middle. Yeah, it was a beautiful day. We'd taken off, and the sun went down. The door was still open. I was in the jump seat facing backwards. And the sun went down and it was pitch dark, and I fell asleep, hanging my head out the door of his chopper. Right. That sailing day was way, way, way more exhilarating than falling asleep at the
Mm-hmm.
door of a chopper. I was strapped in, obviously.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another story. Gosh. But yeah, so the other thing that I'd probably add to that is the part of our brain that makes us human is the frontal cortex. It's 25% of our brains. Right? The next nearest animal on the planet is 5% of their brain. Right? And it's the frontal cortex that helps us to determine right from wrong, to be able to it essentially sets our moral compass, and helps us to essentially evaluate something, weigh up the good, the bad, the risks, the etc., and decide what we're going to do about it. Right? It's part of what helps us to plan, and it also is the bizarrely, for all the amazing things that it does, it helps to try and keep us honest. So it says, do the right thing. What it also does is, if you decide to do the wrong thing, it encourages you to do a really good job of it and take pride in your work. So if you're gonna tell a lie, tell a good lie. Right? It's crazy, right? So don't tell a lie, but if you're gonna tell a lie, tell a good lie. Right? Yeah, so it's that part of the brain. And so what happens is that when something happens, the initial part that everything is received into is the amygdala, right? So that's essentially the root of your fight flight part of your brain. It's it's literally just behind the frontal cortex. And so what happens when you get into traumatic experiences, what happens is that your reflexes start kicking in, and your ability to think about, what am I going to do in this situation? This is not good. I should probably leave, or I need to do something to ensure my survival. So the more traumatic the experiences become, the shorter the route into your amygdaloid responses, and the less your frontal cortex is actually engaged. Right, and that's why that's essentially the root of PTSD, and is your ability to see a snake, for example. Like, we've all seen a snake, and immediately you sort of go, oh, spiders, tiny little spider, the little one, everyone is sort of like this. And then, but if you think about it, you're like, well, hold on a second, I recognize that, I've seen them before. So there's a process that your brain goes through to essentially assess what you've just seen and determine whether it's dangerous to you or not. So what happens when you got PTSD is your brain doesn't do that. Your brain doesn't assess anything. It literally just kicks off sweating, heart rate, anger, also, potentially even violence, right? Kicks all of that kind of stuff off. Right, and so yeah, the more times that you can spend, like I think you described quite well, the more times the way you can spend doing things that are exhilarating in positive ways, the more you replace and you regrow those neural networks that give you a different option. So the other thing then is essentially dopamine, which is our feel-good chemical. And the more you do things that give you dopamine releases, hanging out with your friends, doing things that are safe but exhilarating, all that kind of stuff, the more your dopamine levels increase. But what I like the most about what you said early on, though, is they never go back to the way they were. Very much like my story, I can't bring my mother back. I can't go back to the life that I had before I had kids. I can't go back to cycling, for example. This is my life now. I love my kids, absolutely love my kids. Right? But life is different now, so I don't miss what I used to have. But yeah, life is different, and the same is true for things like depression and PTSD. It's like being a recovered alcoholic. You're never not an alcoholic. You're just a recovered alcoholic, right? And so the awareness that you will never live without it. You just learn to live with it, and you learn to work with it. I think that's one of the key things, I think, for a lot of people. So your low dopamine times will come, but having these positive habits, I think, are quite key to being able to weather those things, and be able to remember that actually, today it's fine. We'll mope, we'll dive under the futon like you said you used to do, and but tomorrow I'm going to put in a phone call. I'm going to go sailing, or go playing golf, or go for a walk, or go sketch, or pick up my guitar, or whatever it is that floats your boat. So okay, so I guess just keep an eye on time. So we've been going for about 40 minutes now. I'm keen to talk before we wrap up about the thing that you guys have got coming up. So you guys have got an event coming up, the OGR, and lights.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the OGR. Hopefully, it won't be a dark moment like this room has just become for me. Tell us about the OGR.
Oh man, I can't wait. So we're taking a Swan 51 in the OGR, and the OGR is the 27,000 nautical mile race around the world.
Okay.
Retro race. So no GPS, no cell phones, no Bluetooth. It's all celestial. It even goes as far as to say, if you want to listen to music, you have a cassette tape
Okay.
So I'm gonna have this big boom box standing on the bow, every freaking port, freaking rocking out to something, some 80s hairband or something. Um, the best thing about this, we're doing it as a nonprofit, as an all veteran crew, the only American flag in the race. But the whole key to this is we're making a docu-series about it. It's a 4-part documentary.
Right.
And we're going to take the key from the British Army and a bunch of others that have already implemented adventure therapy into the military.
Right.
So we have our local operations. We've got the first documentary. We're starting to get a lot more notoriety
Okay.
about what sailing can do. This is going to help push us to the next level. We've got
Okay.
2 groups already for 2 lobby groups, the lobbyists in the DC to help implement. And hopefully we're going to push hard enough to get adventure therapy implemented into the American military. So after deployment, instead of like, okay, here's a week, you sit down, hang out on base, and then now here's your 30 days leave, just go out, don't do anything stupid. Good luck. This is going to be when you get home, you'll have, however it gets set up, maybe a week, kind of decompress, get used to being home, get unpacked, get ready, and then you go out for 2 to 3 weeks. Part of your unit will be required to go do sailing, camping, hiking, some form of decompression and adventure therapy. So what we're trying to do is push it to where this is how, I guess the best way to put it is, this is how to show the world the actual benefits and effects of sailing on PTSD.
Right.
Like, that's how we're pushing this, and that's what we're going for. So that's also going to help us grow. So we're looking to get federally funded so we can get active duty out. So now, instead of having all these PTSD, the nightmares and anxiety, having all the veterans come out with it and being that much more likely to commit suicide, maybe we stop it at the source. Maybe we can make it a little easier. Hopefully now they're going to be a little more relaxed, a little more closer to they were prior to deployment or dealing with those traumatic incidents. So that way, when they do get out, they can be a productive member of society. They're happier, they'll live a more fulfilled life, and they can actually go out and not get stuck in their house, not be like, oh, I'm just not doing anything. I'm done. I don't know why I'm here. I'm just going to kill myself today. They're not going to hatch that plan. This way, I mean, we're trying to stop veteran suicide. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to stop. It's been going on for however many hundreds of years, but we got to do something, because we were just talking about the study the other day. Everybody knows about the 22, but what they don't advertise is if you include drug overdoses, that kicks it up to 44 veterans per day.
Wow.
So, yeah. So they're trying to numb pain with drugs or alcohol. Well, now that maybe they just said, screw it, I'm done. And they pushed it farther. So it's all goes hand in hand. So, I mean, we're talking about 22 a day when the numbers are 44. And it's like, wow, we got to do something.
So the actual, death by suicide is only half of the overall picture about the lives that are prematurely ended as a result of choices that have been made.
Yes.
Wow. I never thought about that.
We've been going over that the past 2-3 weeks now. One of our buddies sent us a case study on it. We were reading through it. It's just blown away, man. And it's like, it's been underreported for years, and we've understood this. We've known this. But to see that number now at 44, it's mind blowing. Really makes you want to push harder.
That's really sobering. Yeah, so the work that I do is not so much focused on veterans per se. It's more so people, by and large. But I think the message is largely the same. About looking for opportunities to do something else other than that outcome. Again, something my brother explained to me once is that the vast majority of people that take their lives aren't deciding to resign out of life, right? They're not saying, I've had enough, I've had a good innings, and I'm going to bow out gracefully before I lose my dignity. they're actually trying to escape. They're trying to escape from whatever this thing is that they're dealing with. They're trying to leave that situation and go somewhere else. They're trying to escape this and go to a better destination. And so, but that destination doesn't come, right? There's nothing, there's no better. And so that's, yeah, that's pretty hectic. But coming back to the OGR, have you guys got a departure point yet? Because when we spoke the last time, you didn't know if it was going to be Le Sable d'Olonne or somewhere else.
They haven't announced it yet. We're still waiting on that.
Okay.
We're leaving Texas June 15th, going around up to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and we're leaving there to go across the Atlantic July 12th.
Okay.
I believe Don McIntyre said end of the month they will be announcing the start port finally.
Oh, okay. So Don McIntyre's organizing this as well.
Yes, this is Don McIntyre's race.
They're obviously in the middle of the Golden Globe race at the moment. Yeah, I guess if there's anybody who knows how to put on a classic around the world sailing race, it would be Don McIntyre and those guys. Yeah, that's pretty exciting. I didn't know that. Right. So the start date is more or less when?
September 10th.
September 10th. Right. So it'll be autumn time.
Yep.
That's going to be pretty exciting. So, and the route is pretty much following the similar routes to most around the world races. So down the Atlantic, around Cape Town, around the Southern Ocean, around Cape Horn, and then back up the Atlantic and back to where the start was.
Yep.
Any stops, or is it a non-stop race?
This one's actually broken up into 4 legs.
Okay.
So we'll go from the starting point to Cape Town, South Africa. That's your first leg. After that, we're heading to Auckland, New Zealand. So we're going to hit the Cape of Good Hope, and then going through Auckland and Australia area. It's going to be the Cape of, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, but it's like Lewin.
Okay.
That Cape, and then obviously Cape Horn coming around South Africa, South America. We're going from Auckland up to Punta del Este, Uruguay. And then the last leg is just a sprint straight back across the Atlantic to the starting point.
Okay.
So it should roughly be 7 months.
Wow, that's pretty exciting. Well, I promised you at the last time that as soon as you know a departure point, you got to let me know, and I'll come and see you guys there.
That'd be awesome.
You know, if there's a way that I could head down to Cape Town, because that was my stomping grounds at one point. You know, having grown up in the military, and I was in the military myself, I lived all over South Africa. Longest I ever lived in one place was 5.5, 6 years. And I left there when I was 25. You know, I lived in some places for 6 months. But Cape Town very much was my stomping grounds. I've sailed out of the Royal Cape Yacht Club. That was my first ever sailing experience. It's special. Have you ever been to Cape Town?
I have not. I have been nowhere besides Okinawa, Japan, Kuwait, Iraq, Canada, Mexico. I have not been anywhere in Europe or anywhere else I want to go. So
you're in for a treat. There is nothing on the planet like Cape Town. It is truly astonishing, especially if you arrive by boat. You know, seeing it from the sea is like nothing you've ever seen before, and you can just imagine what it was like. You know, when the Portuguese sailors first rounded the Cape in the 1500s, early 1600s. You know what it was like to arrive there, see that crazy mountain, and set foot on those shores for the first time. What happened there after that was is not the topic for this conversation, but nevertheless, it's a special place. It is a very special place. We're very privileged to be able to live in places like that. So I guess we've got a call to arms, right? And that's the point. That's sort of the main purpose of this because you guys are actively fundraising and with a hard drive to be able to shore up as much capital and funds and donations, etc., for this OGR. It's not going to be a cheap excursion. So
So
what can people do for you?
so right now, if you go to skeletoncrewadventures.org, there's a donate button. We actually have our first annual fundraising gala next Thursday. They can donate to that. They can sponsor a table. That information's all on the website. They can donate $5-10 if they want. Everything helps, but yeah, it's definitely, we're fundraising. We're really actively pushing as hard as we can to fundraise. We're doing a pretty good job so far, but we absolutely always need more help, more donations, more sponsors. You can get up with me. You can email us through the website also. Yeah, go to the website, check it out, and that'll have links to everything else. You can find the first documentary Taylor made when he took a 36-foot Watkins around Cape Horn.
Oh, wow. Going which
Crazy
way?
guy.
Wrong way or the right way?
From west to east and then back.
Oh, wow. Gosh, that
Yeah.
takes some big cojones. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go east to west around Cape Horn. It's not for the faint-hearted. And so the website again, skeletoncrew.org.
Skeletoncrewadventures.org.
Skeletoncrewadventures.org. And
There we
yeah,
go.
there we go. Skeletoncrewadventures.org. And so your gala is the 2nd of March?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what I mentioned at the start of this call, that that's my birthday. I'll be turning 20.
That's what it was.
Yeah, I'll be turning 29 again.
I know the feeling.
I have many years of experience being 29. The last thing that I forgot to ask you, so obviously one of the things that the Marine Corps is most famous for is your essentially your motto, your slogan, right? Semper Fi. So that obviously is Latin for always ready. Is that right? Or Semper
Always
Fidelis?
faithful.
Always faithful. I knew I was going to butcher that, right?
That happens.
Yeah, that's right. Because semper paratus is always ready, right? And then Semper Fidelis.
Coast Guard.
Yeah, Coast Guard's is Semper Paratus. And so always faithful, and that it sounds to me runs core to everything that Skeleton Crew does, right? So
definitely.
Tell us about that, and even from your personal experiences in the Marines, what does that mean for you, and what does it mean for Skeleton Crew?
So in the Marine Corps, through boot camp, you get the history just ingrained in you, like first aviator, first black, first woman. I mean, there's a ton of different ones. Yeah, still in the office, and there's just so much Marine Corps history that's put into you. You have so much pride in it, and then with all this pride, now you in turn you have the drive to, no matter what, you always want to stay faithful to the Marine Corps. You want to stay and hold up the highest traditions. So even getting out now, it's like, okay, I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years active duty, plus Iraq in 2004. Now I'm still a Marine. Yes, I'm not active duty. I'm out, but I still hold myself to that standard, and I still do my best to help everybody else out. It's just kind of one of those things to where you get the mentality of, if you can help somebody, do it. Go out of your way. Don't be a dick. Be nice. Try to help somebody the best you can. And especially your brothers and sisters. You always look out for other Marines. And I mean, obviously all the services, but there's that bond in the Marine Corps. I can meet somebody who was 10, 20 years before me, or 10, 20 years after me, and all of a sudden we hit it off like we're best friends.
Yeah.
So it's always carried through with life, and that helps with relationships and dealing with other people as well.
Yeah, I like that. Like that a lot. Semper Fi.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mark, we're not far off an hour, which I think was longer than we went the first time around.
Pretty sure it is.
No, 57 minutes at the moment. But yeah, so longer than the first time around. I've enjoyed this call. Arguably it's even more than the first time around, because it's great to meet somebody that I now regard as kind of a friend. I wish I could be with you guys next Thursday. I'd love to come to the gala. But good luck with that. And so I guess, just to remind people, so skeletoncrewadventures.org. and support the not just the work, but also the preparation for the OGR, the around the world yacht race. And you know, and I presume people will be able to follow the progress once it all kicks off as well.
Yep. And then once I know exactly where, whether it's on oceangloverace.com or if they're going to do like a YB races, I'll definitely let everybody know. We'll kick that information out as well.
All right, sounds good. Well, Mark, it's a pleasure as always. We should probably check in, like make a plan to check in with each other every 3 or 4 months, at least share some stories,
Definitely.
share some updates and things like that. That'll be great. I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right. Speak to you soon, Soldier.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Cheers, Mark.
Have a
Good luck
one.
with everything.
Thank you.
All
Have a
right,
good
cheers,
one.
bye. So there we go. Skeleton Crew Adventure. Sorry, I was trying to switch this freaking light on. Yeah, anyway, hopefully you guys can see me. SkeletonCrewAdventures.org. Support them as much as you can. They do amazing work, and Mark and the crew down there are a testament to, I think, some of the good things that people can do if they pull together and aim for goodness. That's it. Signing out from me. If you want to share this video, I would really appreciate it. The more you can get the message out there about what Skeleton Crew are doing or what we're doing here at Sailing with a Weirdo, the better. If there's one thing that I want you to leave you with on this video is, as a result of the work that I'm doing, we're doing at Sailing with a Weirdo, as a result of the work that Mark and them are doing, I know of multiple organizations that have started up as a result of this, and multiple people whose lives have been positively affected as a result of this work. So if any of this resonates with you, get in touch with us at Sailing with a Weirdo, Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, or get in touch with Mark at SkeletonCrewAdventures.org. We would love to hear from you.